Hey guys, Rob from Georgia here with you, aka VHS82 apostrophe, with my ongoing Italy's Holocaust series, looking at the films from Italy from 1979, beginning with Lucio Fulci's Zombie, and all the way through up till 94, looking eventually we'll hit there Michele Soavi's Della Morte, Dellamore, or Dellamore, Della Morte. I always mix those two back up. Cemetery Man, for those who aren't familiar with the Italian title. But all the stuff in between, and a lot of the stuff I hit on, I'm going to hit, stuff that I necessarily didn't grow up with, but I'm also going to hit the stuff, especially the stuff that drew me into the world of Italian cinema. In today's entry, episode 15, Joe D'Amato's Anthropophagous, or The Grim Reaper, or Anthropophagous. And there's probably a slew of other titles that go along with it. I'm still riding the 88 Films release of this. Now Severin has, I'm sure, probably a beautiful release. They do have one. It's about 30 bucks. Just looked it up on Blu-ray. And unfortunately, I couldn't see the product description in terms of the extras and stuff. The 88 really doesn't have anything on here. There is the rise and fall of the Italian, or 42nd Street, that documentary, the rise and fall. Not sure if I can see it. Yeah. 42nd Street Memories, the rise and fall of America's most notorious block. That's the big documentary that this release has to offer. And I think a couple trailers, maybe a trailer or something. Other than, the reason why I'm still running with this is, one, I just haven't thought about upgrading, although I probably should, because I absolutely love and adore this film. Like I said, I would have rented this back in the day on VHS, and it's one of those, it was one of those gateway films into the world of Italian cinema. I didn't really know anything about Joe D'Amato or other things, although I absolutely, I'm very appreciative of the man, mostly for his company Filmrage, which produced this, but weirdly didn't produce Absurd, which is weird. But that company Filmrage is the company that was behind Michele Soavi's directorial debut with Stage Fright, which I consider, I'm just gonna say it, the greatest slasher ever. There it is. In my mind, I absolutely love that. But Filmrage was an excellent opportunity back in the day for Joe D'Amato to produce and get a line of films and new directors given their first chance at getting their teeth cut onto something. And so Filmrage, you know, when I watched Stage Fright as a kid, the thing that really just glued to me was, just seeing Filmrage, and then boom, you're going in, and that's what I really remember. The movie, of course, but I remember Filmrage, but I didn't know Joe D'Amato was behind all that, and I'm very thankful to him. It is too bad that we couldn't have gotten a trilogy out of this of sorts, but I don't think he was really in the mood for that, or thoughtful of that, or Absurd is, although in spirit, sort of a sequel of sorts. Not really a sequel, but sort of, it could have been, just like the Gates of Hell trilogy, the Three Mothers trilogy. The continuity between the three would have obviously been George Eastman in the titular roles, plus he's writer. But if there's a third piece, there was talk, and I've read this somewhere, there's I think there was a secret lab into medical experimentation and stuff, and this is I think mentioned in Absurd a little bit with why he's sort of superhuman, the killer, George Eastman. But that lab, that Greek island that was doing that stuff, could have been that one small piece of continuity besides George Eastman, really. And it's too bad that George Eastman couldn't have, and I don't know if he did or not, but really pull the third piece out. And it could have been, man, could you imagine? This could have been a great horror trilogy under the Filmrage label. And it could have been, in fact, geez, let George Eastman direct the stupid thing and be in it or something. I don't know why a third piece couldn't have happened. I've never seen a documentary or listened to a commentary that would have answered that. But it's really unfortunate. In light of, the Gates of Hell trilogy, although loosely connected, it's still thought of as a trilogy, and a dang good one too. I consider it the greatest horror trilogy ever. But Jim Harper does not have very many glowing. He doesn't have anything good to say about this movie at all. And remember, I do utilize Jim Harper's Italian horror as a reference guide, just to kind of pick and pan, find a movie, see what he said about the movie. I just underlined a few things that he said. And I don't agree with anything he said, actually. He begins, Anthropophagous is an exceptionally dull film. I completely disagree. I love me some island horror, especially if it's Italian island horror. I don't need my movie to go 1,000,000 miles an hour like Evil Dead 2 to have fun. It can be quiet. It can be atmospheric. And there is... the use of the lightning storms, the rainstorms at night, it's very effective, especially with the lightning flashes inside the house. And I'm going to get into the story here real quick. He refers to the cast as wooden. The score is irritating. Now you're not hearing the best part of the score right now. This is just sort of on the menu screen. But it's anything but irritating to me. Just after he talks about perhaps the two goriest bits. Now, of course, this is what got itself on a notorious list there in the 80s in England. Could have been prosecuted for having this movie. It really, there is the fetus scene where the Grim Reaper, of course, our Anthropophagous, tears a fetus out of the womb, although it's not near as graphic as you would think. The use of a skinned rabbit is what really sells it, and just it kind of put it over the edge. And then I would say probably the scene towards the end where he's feasting on his own innards. But there's a few other gory scenes, but not, I mean, when you watch and you think, this movie was on that list? Anyways, just having talked about those two scenes in particular, he says, ultimately, these moments are the only reason to see the film. I could not disagree anymore. I thought Joe D'Amato did a really, really good job on this film, considering the majority of films that he was producing, and they were not horror films. It was nice to see him really kind of tackle. Now, he's known for Beyond the Darkness, of course, Absurd, the very, 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 very loosely connected sort of part of the universe, because it does have George Eastman in there. Although it's more of a nod to Halloween 2 more than anything, probably. The old original Halloween 2, right? He says, Anthropophagous is largely a waste of time. I could not disagree. I love this movie. And I have to say, this is the reason I went region-free. This was the first of a couple movies that I ordered specifically. I went region-free. There was a day and a time not long ago when this movie, Serena had not put it out. There was no U.S. release unless you had the VHS from way back in the day sitting on your shelf, or had this in some other format. You didn't have it. You could say the same for Phantasm, for the Beyond, Fulci's masterpiece. Unless you had these on some rare vintage format, Laserdisc or something. The only way to get Anthropophagous at the moment I got it was on 88 Films, but the only way you could do that is if you had a region-free player. The only way you could do that is by ordering one off of Amazon, making sure you're getting the right one so that you could play any disc that you purchase around the world. And this was the first little small grouping of movies I ordered from 88 or Amazon UK. And I did it specifically because I wanted this film in my library. I wanted it more than anything. This was one of those lost pieces of just relics from my old past that I remember renting at the VH store, and I thought, man, how freaking great would it be to have this freaking thing in my collection? And of course, now we live where anyone can have it because Severance's got a great release of it, plus of streaming, like, I don't know if it's on Shudder or not, but I would imagine if it's anywhere, it's there. You could probably see it on Tubi or something like that. I don't know. But I don't like streaming things. If I don't absolutely have to, I'd rather pull it off my shelf and go put it in. In fact, I just revisited this last night. And never disappoints me. I appreciate it a little bit more and more every time I watch it. The other thing is, he said, there's nothing here to suggest the competency of a professional filmmaker. It's a classic case of a film's reputation far exceeding its truth. Now, I will give a little bit of a grain of salt to Harper's points by saying that its reputation really did far exceed just how of a nasty film this was. It's really not. It's mostly moody, atmospheric. You get these kids, not really kids, they're young adults, not even young adults, they're older. They're traveling the Greek Isles. We're first introduced to a German couple on this island who fall victim to really, I think it's meant to be the first casualty of the Grim Reaper before he lays the town out. She's the girl swimming in the water and ultimately falls victim to the Grim Reaper. The boyfriend's, presumably the boyfriend is laying on the beach. The only one smart in the moment is the dog who runs off when the Grim Reaper sort of, like Jason part 7, when he first rises up out of the water, we get that behind. Although you don't see him, it's his point of view, right? And he sort of comes, like a monster from the depths of the ocean, rises and grabs another victim there. And then presumably, he's sort of like a contagion or a disease, sort of meanders into the island, and we find out through conversation and diaries and bits and pieces, sort of like a mystery shrouded in these few who will end up stranded on this island. And one who actually knows this island pretty well. She has been there before. Tisa Farrow, who plays Julie, she is actually on her way to this island specifically because her job there is to look after this daughter of this English couple who happens to be blind. So she's been there before. So she's looking for her way to get there. She runs across, and they're on one of those up in the air trolley car things. I think they're up in the air, and they're making their way to a port where they can get out and find a boat. They have a boat and get the boat, and then a set of circumstances causes Julie to she overhears them talking about their voyage and their visiting of the Greek Isles, and she's going out there. So she's like, "Can I hitch a ride?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." And so basically they head out there, and the minute they arrive on scene, of course, trauma falls. Now, we sort of get this idea from Carol, another one of the characters in there, who is reading tarot cards, that something very ominous, something very death-like is coming. It's approaching, and they are wandering right into its shroud. And so there is this great scene on the boat where she's so beside herself. She just ultimately tosses the tarot cards off into the water, and I guess in accepting the doom that there's nothing she can do to escape it, and she can't convince anyone else that it's coming. And she ultimately is right in the end, ultimately. I won't place necessarily the credit on the tarot cards per se, but she does have this very foreboding feeling that something very, very bad is coming to all of them. And it will, with the exception of, I think, two that survive the Anthropophagous. And so once they're on there, Maggie, who's Arnold's wife, who is pregnant, who ultimately that will be the mother of all scenes at the end, right? Which the reputation precedes the film. She sprains her ankle just coming off the boat. They're all going to kind of walk Julie up to the house. It becomes very apparent there's no one around, and they will find out very quick. Like, they leave Maggie back on the boat with the ship captain, and they go in, and very quickly from there on out, they will realize this place is a ghost town, with the exception of one girl who's wandering around like a ghostly apparition, can't figure out who this person is. Ultimately, they will in the end, and then they will, of course, ultimately stumble upon the backdrop history of the Anthropophagous and who he really was, and the tragedy that befell him and his wife and his son while they were stranded in a raft out in the ocean. Ultimately, as well, they will also find out in their early travels, in the first morning, that they'll come back. The Anthropophagous has already visited the boat. He has already taken a prize, a head, as well as Maggie, unfortunately. The boat's drifting off. They don't know why. They go back in. They see cover at Julie's, at the place that she's supposed to be babysitting this girl. And of course, still no one around. Daniel, and I'm going to kind of wind it in here. Daniel, who is supposedly with Carol, has his eyes on Julie, even though he supposedly is with Carol. He will oogle and eye all over Julie and can't get enough of her, and will try to connect with her. And of course, she understands what he's doing and everything. Early on, in the first night they spend, Daniel goes down, or follows with Julie down, because they hear a sound or something. You know how it goes. And they go down into the basement area, and there's this is great scene, one of the great scenes in the movie. I love it. This small little cat jumps on the piano. Of course, that's your jump scare, right? And then before you know it, man, Rita, or Henrietta, who is the blind girl who's been hiding in this huge vat of wine, just out of this thing with this huge butcher knife, comes down and just nicks the crap out of Daniel. Of course, he's a baby about it. And then, of course, that is such an awesome scene. And then you just have this character who is blind. And, it reminds you in a little way of the little girl from Aliens, who despite all odds, found a way to hide. She can smell the Grim Reaper, and so she's able to hide and basically stay out of his pathway. And she ultimately, aside from the other character, she is the only one. And there is a reason why the other character isn't dead. Although there may be an interesting fate awaiting her. Rita. This is why I don't agree with Jim, man. Now there is some for night shots that aren't the greatest, but I have to say this. I think they are about as effectively done as you're going to see in a movie. I have been in the infantry. I have been out in the field for huge lengths of time, out in the middle of the wilderness. I have seen, in the middle of the night, I have seen the moon is very capable of almost making it feel like light sometimes, a weird sort of light. And so the day for night shots don't really bother me that much because I've experienced that kind of thing before, where it really does feel. And you add in the lightning and the storm and everything, and really they're not as bad as some movies. And so, by the point where Rita is brought into the situation, the Grim Reaper is well on his way to carving up this group. And what happens with the rest of them throughout the rest of their journey on this island is he comes upon them one by one, and they fight. There will be, a great moment towards the end where, of course, Julie and Rita are hiding up in the attic of this house that literally was the home of, what's his real name? Claus Wortman, the Wortman family. And they're hiding up in the attic, and he can't come up from underneath, so he comes up on top of the roof, man, and the tension just builds, and Rita's just, sitting there, and then there's a scene where the camera's sort of back a little bit, and then, man, that hand just comes right down through the roof and grabs the poor girl by her hair and just starts pulling her up, and there is absolutely nothing Julie can do about it. And ultimately, we get towards the very end of the film, where ultimately it's Julie and a surprise, another surprise character who's still alive that you forget about, actually, who will come to save the day. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I think it is a great movie, man. This is one of the gateway films into Italian cinema for me. This is what helped open up the door into the Fulci films, Argento films, the Mattei films, on the lesser end of spectrum, right? But who opened up all of these incredible worlds, that nobody was doing here. I mean, you had glimpses, right? In 1984, Wes Craven's A Nightmare on Elm Street, that nightmare logic, per se. Italian cinema as a small kid, teenager, laying on his living room floor in front of his console TV, watching a Letterboxd VHS cut of Suspiria. I'm in the pitch black. I mean, it was mind-bending and blowing. And then, something like this, Anthropophagous. It was horrors as a kid that you couldn't even really recreate in your own mind or fathom in your own mind, and to experience it on film. And as a kid, you're not thinking about all the negatives of a film, day for night shots, all that junk. It's like Hell of the Living Dead. I was, as a kid, absolutely immersed. I mean, that movie was, it was nightmarish for me to think about this commando unit going into this island and trying to ascertain why this chemical plant was unleashing itself and people turning into zombies and all this stuff. Now, obviously, I watch it today and I watch it with a much different sort of critical eye, but I can enjoy it for what it is. As a kid, though, it's totally different. And that's the one thing I think Jim Harper fails to realize over and over and over and over, that at least for some of us, these movies were gateway films. Just absolutely incredible experiences to be had. And to this day, I love Italian cinema, especially from this period of time, but leading up to it and even slightly after. So anyways, Joe D'Amato's media actually was the one who put it out on VHS back in 1980. I'm sure that is what I would have rented as a kid. But Anthropophagous, when's the last time you watched this? Do you enjoy it? Do you get the same kind of kick that I get out of watching it? I have no problem putting this movie on, watching it late at night, and the pitch black, man, and just the atmosphere of it. And I thought Joe D'Amato did a really, really good job with it. And of course, I think George Eastman being part of the process really helps with that, with his writing and whatnot. And so it's good stuff, man. It's really good stuff. I really do probably need to upgrade for my Blu-ray, and I really do apologize. I see where my time is, and this is really longer than I'm used to, and actually wasn't what I was intending to do, but it is what it is. It is what it is. So you're either here for the long ride listening or you're not, but I'm going to end it there. Way too long. But anyways, ongoing. I hope you enjoy. Leave a comment, hit the like, sub if you haven't subbed. Also, I'm on BodyBags. I'm the regular Wednesday evening host over at BodyBags. We have 7 different reviewers across the entire week. I also have my Space 1999 series as well ongoing. So there's that, and a whole ton of other stuff in the channel. Anyways, Super Bowl tonight. I ain't got no dog in the fight, obviously. We'll see if I don't know. I'm sure it'll be on the TV, but anyways, hope all is well. Thank you, as always, go Bills.
This is not a dream.